Hey everybody, Father Warner here. So we continue with our study of the book of Hosea, the prophet Hosea, a minor prophet with a major message. Minor, as I always say, because not because of the content, but because of the number of chapters that we find in the prophet Hosea versus, say, prophets Isaiah or Jeremiah or Ezekiel. Hosea has just 14 chapters. We are in the 10th chapter. Now, for many of you, I want to tell you that while I have stopped giving you a reflection based on the first reading, you will find in the description of this teaching a link to a YouTube link to a previous teaching that I've done for Friday of the 14th week in ordinary time. So look at the description box in case you want, but for those who'd really like to do a good study of Hosea, I'm going to do one chapter a day till somewhere midweek next week, and then I'll begin Micah, because next week we're going to do, or rather from Saturday, we're going to do the prophet Isaiah as the first reading, and then the following week Micah. So I hope to kind of anticipate the book of Micah so you're ready for it when we get there. Let's go to chapter 10, and the message really hasn't changed. The attitude of the people of Israel hasn't changed. God has also not changed his mind. You know, you'll find that in prophetic literature, very often pre-exilic prophetic literature, remember prophetic literature is broken up into three parts. Pre-exilic, that's before the exile, then you have the post-exilic, and the pre-exilic, the exilic, and the post-exilic. We are talking right now about the exile of the northern kingdom. The pre-exilic literature includes the exile that took place of the southern kingdom. So that happened much later in 586. Right now we are in the prophet Hosea, and Hosea is prophesying the exile of the northern kingdom, which took place in the year 721 BC. So we continue. As I said, the message of God hasn't really changed, and neither this time is his resolve. But just to anticipate, when we come to chapter 14, God's heart will melt, as it always does. It did at the end of the prophet Amos. God always melts. His heart melts. His judgment is still carried out. Punishment is still carried out. But God always will then speak of restoration. Yeah, never of total destruction. There will always be a new horizon for those who have remained faithful to the Lord. So let's begin with chapter 10, and straight away chapter 10 verse 1 to 15, it identifies the objects in which Israel trusted for its security, the objects Israel trusted for its happiness, and the objects that Israel trusted for their prosperity. So it was a very luxurious, very fertile land. It produced great wine, great fruit at that point of time. We are told that the country improved. The country improved meaning economically it was doing very well. I'll go by verse, just giving you a couple of the highlights. It had its high places, in inverted commas, their places of worship. It had their king, whom they looked up to. We are also told that they had warriors, they had power, they had fortresses. So very often when we are surrounded by material wealth, happiness that comes from material wealth, from economic prosperity, we tend to marginalize God, and that's what chapter 10 is going to tell us. And God is going to say, I'm going to take all of this away. So verse 1, Israel is a luxuriant wine. Now wines, as we know from scripture, was always depicts a blessing from God. You can see this in Psalm 80 verse 8 to 15, in Isaiah chapter 5 verse 2 to 6, in Jeremiah chapter 2 to 21. So God says Israel is a luxuriant vine that yields its fruit, and we know it yielded very, very good fruit, because, as I said, this was a very fertile land that produced and did economically very well. Now, interestingly, the more his fruit increased, which means the more economic gain that Israel made, the more altars he built. Altars to whom? Altars to Baal, not to Yahweh. Remember, the northern kingdom under their first king Jeroboam the first began to build altar shrines in Dan, in Bethel, to fertility gods. They created golden calves. So God says the more his fruit increased, the more altars he built. As his country improved, he improved his pillars. The pillars were places where they would go to worship and to offer these gods sacrifices. So basically, God is saying, the more economically stable you got, the less you thought of me. And he will talk about these false worships that the people of Israel succumb to, give their heart to. Verse 2, their heart is false, and now they must bear their guilt. So God says, all that you do, the translation of the word is false could be insincere, could be flattering, or divided. It's more to be their heart is insincere. Their heart is insincere, and because you have an insincere heart, you must pay the price, says God. You must bear your guilt. The Lord will break down their altars, and he will destroy their pillars. Verse 3, for now they will say, we have no king. So you'll see, as you begin to think that, oh, I've got a lot in my bank balance, I'm the richest man in the world, I don't need God, I don't need a king. And this is exactly what they said. For now they will say, meaning now that they are rich, now that they are economically strong, now they will say, we have no king. Up to now, they had no problem. They needed God. Yeah, God, please give me this. God, please give me this. But now that I'm economically strong, they will say, we have no king. For we do not fear the Lord. There is no fear even for God. So the question is there a God? Yeah, we're doing very well. We don't need God. So is there a God? And a king, what could he do for us? What can God do for us? This is how the people of Israel, and this is how people who sometimes are deluded by their wealth begin to say. Verse 4, they utter mere words, with empty oaths they make covenants. Yeah, careful, because this is not only for the rich, it's also for us. I was thinking as I prepared this that very often, linked to the sacraments, linked to baptism, linked to marriage, there are questions asked. Linked to ordination, there are questions asked. At baptism, we ask the parents, will you bring up the children in the faith? At marriage, you will say, do you take this person to be your wife? Will you love and hold for the rest of your life, in good times and in bad? These are vows. And very often we are uttering mere words. Yeah, we'll say to the priest, yes, I'll bring up my children in the faith. Yes, I will. And then comes catechism, and we don't want it. Yeah, so they utter mere words. With empty oaths they make covenants. So litigation springs up like poisonous weeds. Now, when when your word means nothing, then litigation comes up, because your word, we grew up in a culture, and I remember the elders in our community always saying, if your word is worth nothing, you are worth nothing. But today we lie. Yeah, when you say, I remember my mother, when my grandfather asked her, do you want some property in Mangalore? And at that time she thought, oh, Mangalore is so backward. I know what she thought. She said, I don't want it. And then she went many years later and she asked my grandfather, can I have it? And he said, no, I have given my word. I have given this to somebody else. That is the power of your word. If your word is worth nothing, you are worth nothing. So we are told, when your word is worth nothing, then there is confusion. Then litigation springs up like a poisonous weed in the furrows of the field. Verse 5. The inhabitants of Samaria. So whenever we refer to Samaria and not to Gilgal or Bethel, then we are talking about the political situation. So the inhabitants of Samaria tremble. Now, why are they trembling? For the calf of Beth-aven. Now, very interesting, we've done this before. It doesn't refer to Bethel. Bethel was the house of God. But Hosea is now making fun of them. He says, this is not Bethel, this is Beth-aven. Beth-aven, Beth is house, Aven is vanity. You have not created a house of God, you've created a house of vanity. So you inhabitants of Samaria who think you are so smug because everything, you think you're economically fine, this calf of Beth Aven that you have built, its people shall mourn for it, and its idolatrous priests shall wail over it. You think that this very expensive golden calf that you have is your prize, it's going to protect you. God says you are going to mourn because, first of all, you will mourn. Ironically, they're not mourning for God that they have abandoned Yahweh. They are mourning now that this calf of theirs, as God will tell them, will be taken like them and with them into exile. And they are also mourning now because they can sense the enemy at the door. So its people shall mourn for it, and its idolatrous priests shall wail over it, over its glory that has departed from it. Yeah, its glory that has departed from it. It's being taken away into exile. Verse 6. The thing itself shall be carried to Assyria. I like the way God doesn't even refer to this idol as the idol or a calf. He here refers to it through the prophet Hosea as a thing. This is meaningless. What you are worshipping is meaningless. This thing itself shall be carried to Assyria. So you will carry your own, in inverted commas, God. Yeah, you and your God are both going to go into exile. The thing itself shall be carried to Assyria as tribute to the great king. Yeah, the king of Assyria is now going to take your golden calf away. Let's go to verse 7. Samaria's king shall perish. So Samaria was the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. So we know that finally the last king of Assyria, the last king of Israel was King Hosea. I've explained in the book of Kings how he was put to death. Yeah, he escaped from Samaria, but he was hunted down in Jericho. He was taken into Assyria. His sons were executed before his eyes, and then he himself, he was blinded. Yeah, they took away his sight. So Samaria's king shall perish like a chip on the face of the waters. The high places of Aven means vanity. Yeah? Beth Aven. So the high places of vanity, the sin of Israel, God says, I shall destroy it. Thorn and thistle shall grow on their altars. So the northern kingdom is going to be so desolate, even the places where you worshipped and everybody would come will now be overrun by weeds, by thorn and by thistle. This is the way I am going to destroy the entire northern kingdom. They shall say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us. In a sense, sometimes when I jokingly say, may the earth swallow me up because I'm so afraid or ashamed of what we have done. Yeah, in the same way, may the mountains cover us, may we die, then go through this pain of seeing our nation being destroyed. Now, verse 9 is a sin that we mentioned already in taken from the book of Judges, chapter 19. We did this in verse 6, verse 9, because they're going to refer to Gibeah, and it's good for you to read Judges chapter 19. I've done it, so you will know what really happened in Gibeah, because Gibeah is mentioned thrice in the book of Hosea. So do read Judges 19. Since the days of Gibeah, you have sinned, O Israel. So your sinning is not something new. It talks about sexual immorality, yeah, the violence that took place to a Levite who was traveling. So since the days of Gibeah, you have sinned, O Israel. There they have continued. Shall not war overtake them in Gibeah? Verse 10, I will come against the wayward people to punish them, and nations shall be gathered against them when they are punished for their double iniquity. Verse 11. Now, Ephraim was a trained heifer. A trained heifer is used for plowing. So God says, I trained you for one thing. I trained you to plow, but you love to thresh. Yeah, you wanted to do your own little thing. You didn't want to follow what I trained you for. So, but you love to thresh. And I spared her fair neck. God is saying, I could have put a heavy yoke around your neck, but I didn't do that. Now, watch what God says. But I will make Ephraim break the ground. Judah must plow. Jacob must harrow for himself. So I rescued you. I was kind to you. I didn't put a heavy yoke on you. But now I am not going to let you go. You must plow. You must harrow for yourself. You must break the ground. Sow for yourself righteousness. A good question you can ask yourself is, what crop are you sowing right now? What crop in your life are you sowing? Are you sowing righteousness? And God says, when you sow righteousness, you will reap steadfast love. Yeah, this word steadfast love really translates as hesed, or God's loving kindness. We often translate this as mercy. So when you sow for yourself righteousness, you reap God's mercy. Yeah, see how nicely it sounds now. So but when you sow death, when you sow sin, the result is death. So sow for yourself righteousness and reap God's steadfast love, or reap God's mercy. Now verse 12 continues, break up your fallow ground. Now fallow ground was ground that was not plowed for more than a year. So the ground is hard, the ground does not yield. It's like God says, you have become in a way so disobedient. No, you become so stubborn, so hard like the ground. Even if I scatter seed in you, you are not ready to accept it. And that's why God says, break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord. It is time. Enough, says God. In some way, He's saying there is still time for you to seek the Lord, that He may come and rain righteousness upon you. Verse 13, you have plowed wickedness. So you have been literally in the service of sin. When you plow wickedness, you are in the service of sin. And now you are resistant, obviously, when you are in the service of sin and plowing wickedness, you are resistant to growth. You have plowed wickedness. Obviously, what you're going to reap? You have reaped injustice. You have eaten the fruit of lies. When you eat lies, what does it do? It deceives you. Yeah? So you have eaten the fruit of lies. It has deceived you because you have trusted in your power. The essence of all sin is that we reject God's ways. You have trusted in your power. And this is what Hosea chapter 10 is all about. Yeah, I began by saying Hosea chapter 10 identifies the objects in which Israel trusted for its happiness, its prosperity, its security. And God says, you have trusted in your own power, in the multitude of your warriors. Verse 14, therefore, the tumult of war shall rise against you. The tumult of war. I'm going to face the entire might of my heavenly army, says God, and all your fortresses. So you trusted in fortresses, you trusted in warriors, you trusted in princes. Well, all your fortresses shall be destroyed. We know that even when the southern kingdom of Judah was attacked by the Babylonians, they first came and destroyed all the fortified cities around Jerusalem. This is much later, but just to give you what God is saying, all your fortresses shall be destroyed, as Shalman destroyed Beth Arbel on the day of battle. Now Shalman, we know of Shalmaneser from Assyria. He was the king, Shalmaneser III. Esar means the great, like Alexander the Great. So his name was Shalman, and Shalmaneser means Shalman who was the great, like you say Alexander the Great. So Shalman destroyed Beth Arbel. Beth means house. Arbel could have been a place, Arbel could have been a person, we don't know. But the king of Assyria destroyed Beth Arbel on the day of battle, when the mothers were dashed in pieces with their children, which means that nothing was left of the city or of this house. Verse 15, thus it shall be done to you, O Bethel, because of your great wickedness. So all the charges of sin, now you can see in this one line, because of your great wickedness, the totality of all the charges of sin are now being told, you are greatly wicked. So don't blame God, yeah, as we often do. Blame yourself. You have been wicked. God has not been wicked. God has been giving and forgiving, and you have taken advantage. At dawn, the king of Israel, very interesting, at dawn, because dawn comes quickly, dawn goes quickly, and very quickly, says God, at dawn, the king of Israel, who was Hosea, the last king of Israel, shall be utterly cut off. I hope you enjoyed chapter 10, and I'll see you again tomorrow when I teach chapter 11. God bless you, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and leave your comments. And please share this teaching with others. Don't also forget that in the commentary box, in the description box, I will put the link for Friday of the 14th week in ordinary time. Bye, everybody.